One of the only blog or Reddit posts I've ever made that's actually gone viral was titled, "Most college applications are not very good." And that might come as a surprise since you only see exceptional essay examples posted on admissions blogs or social media. Even so, many college essays featured on those blogs are still full of cliche and hyperbole and even aren't particularly good. The reality is that most college submissions everywhere are not very good. Even academically perfect students with stellar resumes and who attend the nation's top high schools still submit crappy essays. Many still manage to gain admissions despite bad writing. And now that I've worked for over a decade assisting over 600 families through my consulting service Tech Submissions, it's obvious to me that most students submit their first draft to universities because that's the sort of writing that my clients send me on their first pass. And it looks a lot like what I used to read when I was an admissions counselor at UT Austin. One problem with holistic review as a tool for assessing talent and character is that mostly mediocre essays aren't a useful indicator for much of anything. One thing I often wondered is to imagine the number of books that admissions professionals could read or write, if not for spending time of reviewing millions of crappy essays each year. I also question that in the age of AI, now there is a real concern about whether students submit essays that are human made, which then just adds to the wasted time. And I know that most essays aren't very good because I used to read them when I was an admissions counselor for UT Austin. And I worked in an era in the early 2010s when people still asked, do they really read all the essays? And yeah, we read them all, our sanity bedamned. Perhaps a dozen out of the 2,000 or so essays that I've read were worth sharing with colleagues, and maybe another 100 wouldn't embarrass the applicant if they reread them years later. However, the remaining 90% of submissions ranged from unremarkable to downright awful, including my own shoddy last minute UT application essays that students themselves claim on Reddit and TikTok that got me into UT honors or whichever top university they're applying. But the reality is, most students gain admission to universities despite their crappy essays. The most popular online community for students applying to and discussing college admissions is Reddit's Applying to College, A2C, where I was the first moderator back in 2015. And nowadays they have over 1 million subscribers. And whenever topics arise around essay quality, current and former admissions counselors chime in with universal agreement that most applications aren't very good. So this isn't just like my opinion. But then on Reddit's college results or other admissions communities like College Confidential, admitted students love to self-report that their essays were an 8 or a 9 out of 10. But this is called the better than average fallacy or the placement bias, since none of you have a reference point of what an average college essay looks like. Almost all students assume that their essays are much better than other applicants, but like statistically speaking, half of all applicants must be below average. And there's a subgenre for beating the college essay that clocks in at over 4,000 books on Amazon because doing even a little bit better than the median mediocre essay can give you an edge. College essays are also arguably the highest stakes writing assignments that you and other applicants will ever complete, which that then commands high consulting fees from people like me. Independent undergraduate admissions counselors might be the highest paid copy editors and writing coaches in the world. If most college essays aren't very good, why do they play such a prominent role? The gatekeeper's gospel leads us to believe that the college essay is an essential tool in deciding each applicant's fate. Admissions offices claim that essays allow students to provide context to their transcript and resume, supply background information about their home environment, share about their identity, and discuss their ambitions, dreams, or anything else that's not easily quantifiable. But the contrast is when readers claim to want to get to know their applicants, never mind that few essays are read closely. They're certainly not being critiqued and red penciled like in an AP English literature assignment. Entire applications are usually skimmed in less than 10 minutes. Selective universities like UT Austin claim that essays are necessary to separate a crowded applicant pool of the academically perfect and extracurricularly outstanding. There was a 2019 study in the National Association of College Admissions Counselors, NACAC, of 220 universities and 24% rated essays of considerable importance, second only to a student's transcript and standardized test scores. And according to the governing body NACAC, applicants nowadays submit almost 4 times as many applications compared with 1990. So that means rising application loads mean more essay submissions, and with ChatGPT, it's easier than ever to apply to college. It's not unheard of for some applicants to submit upwards of 50 essays for their varied admissions, honors, and scholarship applications nationwide. Students who apply for universities all over the country likely work anywhere from 100 to 200 or even more hours on their applications, and that's not even counting for distractions. Time pressures nudge students to use AI and ChatGPT as a low quality shortcut that may not actually save any time. And now, in the age of ChatGPT and generative AI, college essays are undoubtedly even worse. One way to stand out from the crowd is just not to use AI. During the fall 2024 semester, this was the first time that my clients really attempted to use AI. And since I look at teenage writing all day, every day, I can detect it immediately. Zero GPT and other AI trackers are accurate enough that it almost always agree with my intuitions when I suspect a student uses AI. So your admissions reviewers will almost certainly have an intuition when you use AI, since it always just looks and feels a little bit off, especially relative to the crappy human written college essays that they read all day. One of my transfer clients, who honestly admitted to relying entirely on AI to get through college, shared that they were self aware of the brain rot they were experiencing. And they said they were unable to even think for themselves or communicate original ideas. They described it as if there were wires that weren't connecting basic parts of their mind. And George Orwell observed that if you can no longer think and write, others will do your thinking for you. ChatGPT outputs for college admissions essays are always generic, impersonal, abstract, awkward, and ultimately counterproductive. They sound pretty, yet they communicate little. And there's no shortcut for putting in the time and energy to produce quality submissions. And even with endless AI prompt engineering, you might get a top 10% or a 20% essay, but never an outstanding one. And since most students and people in general don't know how to write, they also don't know how to use AI tools for writing and editing. Moreover, over-editing and application submission paralysis is also a huge problem. Students wait for days or sometimes weeks to submit their applications. So what ends up happening is a student has 5 different versions of an essay, but they can't assess the quality and know which one to submit. Another flaw is that ChatGPT can't yet tell you the reasoning behind why it prefers one essay over the other or has an understanding of the admissions reviewers themselves. So even when you prompt it to give you feedback, it's sometimes inconsistent, inaccurate, and ultimately unhelpful because you can only submit one essay. College essays have always been bad, but part of me wonders when and to what degree AI, an automated holistic review for college admissions, is going to potentially make the college essay disappear. But for now, universities, honors programs, summer programs, and scholarships require more essays than ever, which is something I criticize in my second book, Surviving the College Admissions Madness. It doesn't seem like the college essay is going anywhere anytime soon, and I take pity on the counselors who undoubtedly have to read endless AI slop. Let me leave you with a final thought. I read an interesting article when I was writing my book, Surviving the College Admissions Madness, and this is an article from 1965. There was a high school admissions counselor, Fred Crossland, and he makes the same point 60 years ago that I make in this video. He laments how there are millions of dollars wasted on application fees, millions of man hours are wasted on recruitment, millions of anxious student hours are wasted on unnecessary and redundant testing and filling out of forms. And that precious time should be spent in learning and experiencing the joys of intellectual growth. But at least in the 1960s, applicants presumably did their own work. Nowadays, it's impossible to know how universities make decisions or whether application submissions come from humans. I hope you enjoyed this video. The easiest way to contact me is by email at kevin@textadmissions.com and to complete the questionnaire in the information section of this video to receive a free admissions consultation by email. Thanks, and I hope you have a great day.